All right, everybody. Welcome to the StoryGrid meets Scrivener lesson I got here on how to use the concepts of the StoryGrid and the capabilities of Scrivener together to prepare for NaNoWriMo. For further questions on Scrivener, you can see on the bottom I got the literatureandlatte.com website. You can go there if I don't answer your questions in this lesson. And also for more information about StoryGrid, you can go to storygrid.com, also on the bottom there. And then I also have some articles about how to use these two together in my website at randysearles.com. So let's quickly go over the agenda. I'm going to go over a quick demonstration on how I use these two tools together. And then I'm going to show you how I set up the editor and the binder and the inspector. I'm going to show you how I use labels and status to track the progress of my manuscript. I'm going to show you how I use the corkboard to kind of get a mind meld, kind of a brain dump, and move things around and sort stuff out. I'm going to show you how to use project targets, and this will become really handy when you do NaNoWriMo because you can program your 50,000 words, and it'll tell you how many of the 1,667 words for that day you've already done, and then how much you have to make up. If you're too low or too high, it'll adjust. It's a pretty cool tool. I'm going to show you compose mode, and then I'll show you some research things that you can use, including like bringing up the StoryGrid web pages in Scrivener and things like that. All right, so let's move on. All right, so for next thing I'm going to do is a demonstration. This is a manuscript that I'm working on. It's called the Love on the Camino. And this is kind of where we're going to go today. This is how I use Scrivener and StoryGrid together. And just to give you, this isn't a basic Scrivener course, but I want to give you a quick orientation. So on the left here in the dark green, we have what's called the binder. In the center is the main writing area. We call that the editor. And on the right-hand side, we have this column called the inspector. And if you don't have it on, you can turn it on and off by hitting this blue with the little eye in it. And at the top, we have a toolbar, which you can right-click on and customize. And we'll go into some of the customizations that I've already done already. So you can choose any of these to customize your toolbar. You just grab it and bring it up there, and it moves it up there. But I've already customized mine, but I'll just show you the tools that I have up there that I use regularly. What I also want to show you today is I want to show you how to use the labels and status on the corkboard specifically. So if you go to the corkboard and go to like the beginning hook, you'll see all these chapters in there. And you'll see all these colors, and I'll explain what all these different little colors mean. So you can, at one glance, you can see what the POV is, which ones have been written, which ones are in their first draft, which ones are set in which locations, which chapters are part of different plots. And then we're going to go into, at the end, we're going to talk about some character and places and some StoryGrid aids that I can add in there, and we'll also talk about composition mode. All right, so go back to our agenda, and first thing up is the setting up the editor. All right, we're going to go back into my page here. So the editor is where you write most of your material when you're doing NaNoWriMo as well. The big things are you can change the background color if you want. I personally prefer the white on the black on white, but let me show you how to do that. And also the best thing I'm going to show you is how to set up all future new pages with the right font and the right size and all of that. So if you go up to Scrivener and Preferences, and then you go to this editing, you'll have a couple of icons up here. You hit editing. You'll come up with this little graphic here. To change the font, you'll hit the large A, small a, and this shows the font. And then whatever fonts you choose, as you can see, I have Times New, and I also have 14. This is what all my new pages are going to show up when I add a new page, okay? And this is also where you can set up your spacing for your lines. And I like a 1.5 spacing for my lines. And everything you do in here, and then you can also set the notes font, which is in the inspector over here and things like that. So all that you do in here will be set for all your future pages, okay? And just a reminder, what you're seeing on Scrivener is not what you're going to end up when you compile it and make a Word document or a PDF document or a Mobi document. This, you can set that up completely separate when you export it. This is just for your comfort, what you want. If you need glasses like I do, maybe you don't want to use your glasses while you're writing because of the strain, or you just need a larger font. You can put it at 14, you put it at 16, whatever you want, whatever the size you want that's comfortable for you. All right, so that's the editor. Let's go back to the agenda. We're going to set up the binder now. So let's go to a blank one. So when you open it, if you open it like a fiction manuscript, for instance, you'll probably end up seeing this, okay? Now, if you're using the story grid, you may want to set up some folders. And those folders, you can add the folders here by going new folder. You can also just push enter in the new folder, and this is a document, but you move the document over and you can change that into a folder. So there's a lot of different ways you can add your folders. Why do you want to add these folders, you ask? Well, if you're following the story grid method, you may want to divide your chapters into what? Beginning hook, middle build 1, if you're going through that method, like Sean Coyne explains in his action, how to write an action book. You'll build 2, and you got your ending payoff. Okay. And in addition to this, you have your scenes inside each of these folders. All right. Here's something I want to show you about your scenes. You can kind of program how long your scenes are by clicking on the bottom here, right here. You'll click on this little tube thing, and you can write in your target number of words for this document for your scene. And Sean Coyne recommends 1500, potato chip length for your scene. And then of course you may go short, so maybe you don't want to go less than 1200, or just be notified. You can go less than 1200, but just be notified if you're under. And then maybe you'll go up to 2,000, but you don't want to go to more than 2,000. Or you just may want to be aware when you're over 2,000, so that when you come back to edit, you may want to cut it shorter or something like that. So you put all this, you can just input this data in all 3 of these. You click show overrun, allowance in progress bar in the show targets notification, and then you've set that up. I'm going to show you what that means in a minute. Now I'll show you right now. So if we go back to what I got, this is what it means. So if you have a document that's under the minimum, and this is the minimum, this is the 1200, it's red until it goes over, okay? If you're over the minimum, but you're under your goal, then it turns blue. So as soon as you go over the minimum, it turns blue. If you go over your goal, but you're still under the overflow example, what'll happen is your green will show what your goal is, and the blue will be your overflow. And if you go over the overflow, which for us is 2,000, you'll see, let's see, I didn't do it. Oh, let me add some to the end of this, and I'll show you how that works. Control C, and add some more. And see, as you can see, it starts turning red. So you've done, this whole thing represents your 2,000, which is your goal and your overflow, and anything additional will be seen as over your 2,000. It will be shown on red and be augmenting here. So that's how all those work. Okay. One thing else I want to show you is, so once you set this for your scene, for your document, for your chapter, whatever you're doing, you set your word limits. You can see down here, this is your goal word limit. The problem with Scrivener is. It only lets you do it, set it by scene. You can't set multiple scenes. But a way around that is if you duplicate. So if you set this scene with all these word parameters, maximum word, minimum word parameters, and if you didn't set the editor already up, you could also set all these fonts and things up here. Then when you right click this and duplicate it, you'll see that this has the same word parameters as the one you duplicated. So it's already done. Otherwise it'll come up as 0 and you have to reset it. And then if you want to do all your scenes like that, you could do that and then duplicate that, and then you got 2, and then you could do this and duplicate that, and then you got 4, and then you could duplicate this to 40, and then you could put like 12 scenes in each one of these folders, and then you'd have what I have in my thing right here, which is a beginning hook, middle build with, and there you go. You got all that stuff. Now what I also do in the binder is I also put an outline for the manuscript, and you might see I have a prologue which happens before the beginning hook, and then I also have in each of my acts, the beginning hook, I have an outline for each one of those that's a little bit more in depth. All right. The important thing is, and we'll get into this when we talk about your target project word count, is that you have to go into the general metadata in the inspector and unclick include and compile, because you don't want whatever you're writing in the outline to be part of your manuscript. So if you'll look at this over here, you'll see I haven't included the outline in include and compile, but I have included it in my individual sections, chapters, and scenes and things like that. Okay? Now, the other thing that I want to show you is these little dots. Now, these little dots are made by the status. Now, you can go into edit status. So if you right-click a document and you click the status and then you go edit, you can change these to mean whatever you want to track. Now, some people track their POVs this way. So they'll write green is Sophia, blue is Mark. And then whenever they write a scene, they'll select that and it'll be that color, and they can see all the POVs. I personally don't do that. I track what I still have to write. So I track red is to do. I haven't even started it yet. Orange is something I've started, but I haven't finished the first draft yet. Yellow, I finished the first draft. And final is I've reviewed the first draft and I'm happy with it until I start the editing process. And then if I have to do some research because there's just some words or some place names that I don't know how to spell or something, I might put blue until I get the research. And then I would put the in the notes section on the inspector, I would type in the research I need to do and it would be blue until I finish that research. So that's something else you could use it for. All right. So, and then one last thing, if you click view, you can click use status color, and it'll tell you can say where you want to use it. So I want to use it in my my binder, obviously. I don't want to use it on my index cards, and I want to use it in show as background color. So you can use it as see these dots, or you can actually have it all the way through. I personally like the dots. I think it looks less cluttered, so I'm going to put it back as the dots. All right, so that's how you set your binder up. Let's go back to our agenda. Let's make sure I got everything. Duplicate, word count. Yep, looks like I got everything. Let's talk about the inspector. All right, so the inspector, when you go over the inspector, there's 5 icons on the top, and you can, one other thing, I'm sorry, for the binder, is if you go back and look at the Scrivener again, preferences, you can go to appearance, and here in the binder, you can change this back color. So I just like forest green, that's why it is, but you just click change default color, and you can change it to whatever you want. So that's the default color, or you can change it back to my forest green color, which I like, which is going to be this. All right. So that's how you do. That's how you change the background color, and you can do the same thing with the fonts. So these fonts, you can change all these font colors, and you can also change the row spacing between these. So I'm happy with the row spacing of 4, and I'm happy with the font the way it is right now. But you can change all that stuff. Okay, I recommend that you choose a background color for the binder that's kind of darkish, because I think the white shows better. If you get a light color, you'll have to change the text to black. And sometimes these colors here, if you got a light color, they don't appear so well. So just take that in consideration, play around with it, whatever you're comfortable with. I mean, the objective is to set this up for November 1st when you start NaNoWriMo, and you're all ready to go. So just whatever you're comfortable with writing and using, I suggest you go with that. All right, so now we're going to go back to the inspector. And what we have here is, so we have the synopsis, and once again, you can go to Scrivener Preferences and Appearance again, and you can go into the inspector and notes, and here you can change all those. This is how I got the notes color down here, okay? This is a reflection of the index cards, which I just chose to be white, okay? And I'll show you how that all reflects when we do the corkboard a little later. But this color is you can change this, but it'll change all the index cards in your corkboard as well. So that's how you change the color in the inspector, and the font, same way. So these synopses, they're super useful for when you want to look at your corkboard and kind of get a really, a really good view of what's going on in your acts or in your whole book. You can see all the chapters with these synopses, and I try to write the wants and needs at the top so I don't lose track of them when I'm writing. Because this is these synopses are, you can see them while you're writing your text, right? And so it's nice to see if I planned ahead. If you're a planner, this is a lot better than if you're a pantser, obviously. But if you write your crisis for the chapter, then you know what your goal is for that chapter. And also, I also try to add in the wants and needs of my character so I don't forget. So a lot of times I'll add them right up here. And then these fonts are all changed where I showed you in the Scrivener up here with Scrivener preferences. And then these notes are things that are just, you're going to see when you open this chapter only, and it's referenced. So I may write the chapter, I may pants it, write the whole chapter with, kind of this in my mind. And then when I finish, I may reread it later on and go, oh, you know what, this isn't as strong as I thought. I need to add to the stakes. I need to make sure that, that Sophia drops her pack and things like that. So I may add things for my rewrite when I finish the whole document. All right, so the next one over is, this is bookmarks, and these are bookmarks within your document or also on the internet. You can connect URLs. I'm actually going to go into that later, and we're not going to do that right now, but I'll show you how to work with those later. This is metadata, and we already talked about the general metadata to include in the compile or not, and then if you choose what kind of type you're writing, which these are scenes, so that's fine. But you can minimize that, and then you have the custom metadata. So the custom metadata is things that you can track, that you want to keep track of, basically. I know it kind of sounds silly, but I do this differently when I write than when I edit. And at the end of NaNoWriMo, I'll put another video up and show you how to use the story grid method and all the spreadsheet columns, and how to use the metadata to edit your book using the story grid, and then put that into an Excel document. And I'll show you how to do all that. But right now, I usually just try to get the essential action of what the purpose of this chapter or scene is. The life value change, because you always have to have a life value change. For world building, these are things that are specific to your book. It could be science fiction and fantasy, where you're talking about different races of creatures. You could talk about the magic sword or whatever are specific to your world. In a real world, you may have like a guy with a limp, and you may want to put a note there that he's got a limp on his right side. That way, later on, if he's limping on his left side, you can look at your notes and say, okay, I got to change that stuff. So these are just part of your world building, that things you want to keep track of. And I have other ways to keep track of it when I'm an editor when I go through it. But for when I'm writing, if I see something specific in there that I need to keep track of, this is where I'll put it. And then the next ones are the 5 commandments: the inside the incident, the turning point, or the crisis and the stakes for the crisis, the climax and the resolution. Now, I may not write this as I write it. I'll try to get to especially in NaNoWriMo, I'll try to get to my 1,667 words for the day. But then after I do the writing for the day, I'll take a break and I may come back and just kind of look at it and see what I'm missing. And if I realize that I'm missing a piece of the 5 commandments, I'll put that in my notes to come back and do later when I do my rewrite. I also, if I am a planner, so a lot of times, especially when I'm preparing for NaNoWriMo, I'll come in here and write down what I think the 5 commandments might be before I write it. Okay, so that's something that you might be able to use. And then down here, you have the keywords. Now, I recommend, this is how I use keywords. It's not the only way to use keywords, but I have the icon up here that I have in my toolbar. You can click on there. You can also get there from pushing this thing right here and show project keywords. It's the same thing. And basically, while I'm writing, this is how I track POV. So I have 2 POVs. I have Mark and Sophia, black and pink. And I have obligatory scenes. If I have obligatory scenes in this chapter, then I'm going to put it with a light orange. I also have my locations. I have courtroom and Camino. Those are basically my 2 locations. I have one other location, but those are the 2 big locations. And then I have some subplots. I have the love story. I have the divorce. I have the kidnapping. I have the rescue. I have things like that. And if something in the chapter has a piece of that, then I'll tag it with the right color. And I'm going to show you later how this all comes together when you look at the corkboard. It's really interesting. But it's super easy to use. You have these set up ahead of time. You can always add more. And then you do something like, let's say this is part of the rescue. You just go down there and add it. That's how easy it is. And then if you don't want it anymore, you just push the minus button. It takes it away. All right? So that's how you use keywords. Now I want to show you the snapshot, which is awesome. So basically, a snapshot is taking a picture of what you have on the screen in the editor. It's taking a picture of that and maintaining it. So in case you want to go back to it, you can. So I have 2 in here right now. Let's say I took one like 2 days ago. I said, oh, this is the scene where they break up. I took a snapshot. After I finished writing it, I took a snapshot. And then the next day, I went back and you know what? I don't want them to break up. I want them to fight and almost break up and not break up. So I rewrote it. I erased some stuff, and then I did another snapshot. So now I have both of those scenes exactly like I wrote them in here. And the really cool thing is I can compare them. So this is the scene right now that I have showing, and then if I want to, I can compare it to this one by doing that, clicking it, and it shows me in red and blue what I added and red what I took away. So it shows me what the difference in the 2 scenes is, and I can see that right here. It's really awesome. So I use a snapshot all the time. When I finish a scene, especially if I finish the first draft, I'll take a snapshot of it just in case I want to come back and change something later. Like you looking at my notes, I change stuff, and then I'll take a snapshot again. And I'll have 10, 20 snapshots in there and when I finish it, just to make sure I don't lose anything. And this is a lot better. I think you'll acknowledge it's a lot better than in Word, where you're saving different versions of the chapters. So that's snapshot. And then this is the comments. It's just like comments in Word. You can go in there and add comments, and they'll come up on the side. You can highlight something and add comments. I'm not going to go into that right now. You're not going to do that while you're writing, probably. So anyway, so that's the inspector. Let's go back to here, and I'm going to go back to the agenda. All right, so we're going to talk about using labels and status. All right. So in my novel I'm writing, there's 2 ways to do this. You have it on the bottom here. You have the labels and status, and then you can also do the right click here to get your labels and status. Now we already talked about the status. All right, which is actually labels. I changed it to status because that's how I use it. This is the status, and what I turned it into is a do by. Okay, And you can change, when you go in here to edit, you can change the, like I call it do by. It's actually the status, but I change it to do by because you can see the labels in the binder, but you can't see the status in the binder. So I want to see my labels here to know if I have what I have to write and what I've finished and things like that. But this is going to go on the corkboard, and I'll show you that in a minute. So these are basically, since I'm a planner, I know I got 30 days, and you could feasibly put November 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 30, but I've done it every 3 days just to make it a little easier and basically give me some flex time. So what I'll do is I'll say, hey, I want chapters 1, 2, 3 done by the 4th, and I want chapters 10, 11, 12 done by the 7th, and things like that. And you may not plan that way, but I find it also helps if I'm doing other projects in here, and I can. If I'm doing my podcast, I'll have my script, and I may have this script needs to be done by this date, and this summary needs to be done by this date. Things like that. That's the way I use it. So how do you do this? I can like take 3 through 5. You can do multiple, and then you do do by 7th of November, for instance. Now all of them got 7th of November. So that's the way you do it. So this really goes smoothly into the corkboard. So we're going to talk about that real quick. And you saw a little piece of it there. So we're going to do the beginning hook. We'll go to corkboard and get this, shorten this thing, the inspector a little bit. So now you have the corkboard. Now you can mess around with the corkboard down here. You can decide how many cards you want, how big the cards are, things like that. Also in the Scrivener preferences appearance, you have the corkboard where you can do the colors and fonts. Okay, these are the status stamps, which are the things that are these things right here, and then the actual photograph tiles. If you want to use those, these are this is for the corkboard itself. But if you want to do the index cards, this is the colors and the font for the index cards. So I choose a white, and that's why I tell you that this is an index card because it reflects off of these. So when you say white, and you can also choose to have rounded and lined or unlined and plain or standard, however you want. I prefer rounded and lined. And basically that's how you do the colors and fonts for the, there's 2 locations. There's the corkboard and the index card. You have to do them separately. Once you do that, and also I recommend you get kind of a dark, if you're going to have a light colored index card, you probably want a dark background. I've messed that up a couple times. So what do we have here? So we have these do-bys that are everywhere, that are right there, and you can change the transparency of these. This is a good transparency. I like that. You can change the transparency down here if you want. These colors on the left are the status, or what's called label in Scrivener, but I change it to status because it tells me I finished the first draft. Let's see, I even forget what I did here. So I got to do, started, first draft, and final. So this is green is final. My yellow is first draft. My red is I haven't started it yet, and I don't have any orange in the beginning hook. All right, make sure. I mean, you could do it just. It doesn't make sense to do a corkboard for just one thing. You usually do it with folders. So you can do it with the manuscript. You can do it with beginning hook, middle build, all those things. And you can see everything there. And so you know what's due, what you've done, how far you've gotten with these drafts and stuff. You know when it's due. And then look at the right side here. So these are my keywords. So black is Mark, POV, and pink is Sophie. So those are my POVs. And red is the love stories subplot, and orange signifies the Camino. And you can, when you hover over it, you can see what they signify. And then the yellow signifies an obligatory scene. So that's a scene that has an obligatory scene in it. So this is how you can kind of get a look at the whole beginning hook and see how it's all put together. And then you can also move these things around too if you want. If you want to move them in here, or you can also move them in the binder. But this is a really good way to get a kind of a once over. Hey, do I have everything? Am I alternating POVs? Am I spending too much time on the Camino, or do I need to move to some other locations? Things like that. So something to think about. And then also, if you have more than 2 POVs, maybe you'll notice like one of the POV, there's just one guy that has one POV, and maybe that's not what you want to do. You want to take him out and give that perspective to one of your other characters. That's a more major character. So that's just a really easy way to use the corkboard. All right, let's go back to the agenda. Synopsis, we talked about that, and then I'll go over the synopsis real quick in the corkboard too. These are the synopses that you wrote when you use the inspector as you're writing your chapters, so you can see what each chapter is about and understand what all these colors are and things like that. So I think that's really, really super helpful. All right, so now we're going to go into project targets. All right, one of the important things we talked about earlier was that when you go to the inspector and you use the metadata, that only the sections that you want to include in your writing, not the outlines, need to be checked for compile. So I have my outline here, no compile, and my folder is compiled, but everything's not going to be in there. That's just a placeholder for when you compile, you can decide to have folders will have an empty page or something like that. But the big thing is the individual documents don't compile or do compile. So that's the big thing, right? So you can get to the targets, and definitely you can go through project targets, or you can go to the icon that you can load up on your toolbar, which is targets. And this is it. So for NaNoWriMo, your goal is 50,000 words, right? So you just click on here and you type in 50,000. Now I've cheated a little bit. I've got almost 5,000 words already because I was listening to the Story Grid podcast, and Tim was interviewing the author of the Sand Sea, and he said he wrote his 700,000 word book, 500 words a day. And that motivated the hell out of me, so I decided I was going to start doing that a couple weeks ago, and that's how far I've got. And Tim also posted something up that said he did 500 words for the last 80 days. So if Tim can do it, he's a busy dude, then I think I can do it. So anyway, you type in your 50,000 words or whatever you want think your manuscript's going to end up as. But for NaNoWriMo, it makes sense to put 50,000. And then this will tell you how many words you've typed so far today out of how many words you need to type in order to reach the 50,000. So for instance, if I type 40,000 here, there you go. I only need to write 986 words a day, and I've already written half of that. All right. So this is a really good tool, especially for NaNoWriMo, to make sure you hit your 1,667. I imagine if you start on November 1st and you put your 50,000 in there, it'll say 0 of 1667. So there you go. All right, so there we go. We got the project targets. Now we're going to go talk about compose mode. Now, compose mode is the mode where you can write kind of without distractions. Now, I'm going to show you real quick. Go into Scrivener, Preferences, and go into composition mode, and you'll see the colors. So you can change the colors right here. This is the background color for just like this, the white on black I have here. For your composition mode, I actually have a light green. It's up to you what you want to do, okay? That's the editor. Then you can also change the color of the text. So I do black on light green, and I'll show you how this all is in a minute. And then all this here's the screen background. Now, I actually have a background of a picture that I imported, and I'll show you that in a minute too. But all these things that are going to be in composition mode, you can change all the colors right here, okay? Now let me show you composition mode. Now, composition mode, you can get there a couple different ways. You can go View, enter composition mode, or you can hit the hot button here that you can load up into your toolbar called Compose. And when you click on that, go into composition mode. So this is the green screen I talked about on black text. This is the picture, the background picture I have. You can go down, when you go all the way to the bottom, this little pop-up comes up. You can do the text scale. You can do the text scale to 90. You can do the text scale to 200, which is where I like it. You can move the paper to the center. So you have all your, if you have whatever, a big photo in the back, you can see things. You can make the paper thinner. You can bring up your inspector and move your paper over a little bit and bring up your inspector so that you can look at what you want to do. You can actually bring the synopsis up instead if that's what you want to do to help you write your scene. You can also bring up your keywords if you want, and then you can add your keywords to your metadata so you don't actually have to go back into the Scrivener proper. You can, I guess you need to bring up category. Oops. Keywords, bam. So you just click this and bring up the keywords if that's what you want to do. The way I usually write this is I'm usually with synopsis, because that has my summary and also my notes that I might need if I forget to write something and I don't want to go back right now. All right. And then you can also change if you want to go on to your next scene. You can go to and you can go to manuscript and beginning hook, and then choose whatever scene you want, and then you go to that scene. There's nothing written there. I haven't written that scene yet, but I have the synopsis right there. All right. So this is how I use it. I usually go paper all the way to the left, and paper width's a little bit wider. That, and that's how I do it. And then let's see, go to manuscript, beginning hook, the storm, bam, there you go. And then to get out, you're just going to push escape, and you get back into Scrivener mode. All right, so that's your compose mode. Let's go back to research real quick. So what I'm not really talking about. I'm talking about research, but I'm talking about, this is the stuff you want to do before NaNoWriMo, right? You want to know what your characters look like. A lot of people will get photos offline to show what their characters look like, and that's what I did. So you have these folders down here. So everything in your manuscript is what's going to possibly be compiled, and then you choose what will be compiled and what won't in the general metadata, as we mentioned. But then you have all these folders underneath that aren't going to be part of the compile, and they're just there to help you so you can have everything in one spot. So if you go to the character folder, I have my 4 main characters. I have Sophie, and what I've done is I went through some pictures of women in Camino hiking clothes, and I decided that this is very similar to what I want Sophie to look like. And then I have Mark. I have Mark's wife. And I have another guy. So that's one way you can use this, and you can also put all your character profiles in there, and they also have template sheets in here for your characters that you can also fill out if you want to do it that way as well. Now, if you want, you can also do the same thing for places, which is what I do. So these are Camino photos that may inspire me. So I copied and pasted a couple of those. This is a courthouse in the military in Italy that I thought I'd get some inspiration from, and this is the base in Italy that I thought I might get some inspiration from, and then you can add all the places you want in there, obviously. And then this is the story grid piece that I was going to add you. So I have my story is primarily a love story with kind of a subcategory of thriller. So what I've done is I went to, if you go to, we talked about the bookmark thing before. So what I've done is I've added 2 bookmarks, and to do that, you just add an internal bookmark and you title it, and then you can either copy the URL in here or you can actually drag it in. And then I dragged in StoryGrid Love Genre, which is an article written by Rochelle Ramirez on the storygrid.com webpage. And I kind of extracted some of the key points: the global value, the core emotion, obligatory scenes and conventions, just as reminders to me as I'm writing my book. And I did the same thing for the thriller. And it's also an article written by Rochelle Ramirez as well. And that's here. So you can actually select it, click Load Web Page, and the web page will appear right here. And you can read it all, and you can expand this out a little bit so it's a little easier to read. Or you can double click on this, and it'll actually take you to it. And I've also, in both cases, I've also linked to StoryGrid 5 Commandments written by Sean Coyne, one of his original articles. It's also on storygrid.com. And you can load that web page here, or you can double click it and go to the web page if you want to go outside of Scrivener. So that's just some ways that you can use all your research items. So everything's in one place, and you're ready to write for NaNoWriMo. All right, so that's a good setup for the StoryGrid and Scrivener and getting ready for NaNoWriMo. And you can, once again, if you want to look down here, you can go to storygrid.com, get more information about the 5 commandments. They got all kinds of articles written about all the different genres there that will probably help you. And then if you want to go to literature and latte, you learn more about Scrivener. They got a search button there. You can search anything. There's some forums in there. You can pretty much figure anything out there. And then on my webpage, rainingstrills.com, there's some articles that I've written merging the two, talking about how to use the keywords and how to load up the metadata for editing, which I'm going to talk about in a later video. So go out and write, and good luck.